Our speaker today, as everybody here should know, is a Novato Rotarian, has been there for a while. She grew up in Marin and started in law enforcement while she was attending Terra Linda High School. And she did a ride along at that point, I believe, with the San Rafael Police Department. Her first police job was a reserve officer in the San Rafael Police Department. And we should really be honored and considered the fact that she is one of the first ladies to be significantly in the law enforcement business early in her career. I think that's pretty neat. She became a full-time police officer in Santa Rosa, and there she volunteered for the downtown walking beat. She became an investigator in Santa Rosa, where she investigated arsons, fraud, embezzlement, and other crime issues. She worked for the Marin County Sheriff's Department, and in 1990 became a deputy district attorney for the county of Marin. In 2018, she was elected district attorney. She could tell us about her innovative immigration relief program, her gun violence restraining order program for law enforcement, and her anti-bullying program. She really has a lot to discuss, and we're going to have 40 minutes, Ron just told you, so we've got a good time for questions. Lori, thanks for coming to speak to us today.
You're welcome. It's so nice to see everybody. And I will preface this with, I did attend the meeting last week, so I did see and hear everything that Sergeant Bates said about the discussion of homelessness. And I did prepare a couple of slides just explaining the reality of my world as your elected district attorney when it comes to prosecuting the homeless. So this is our district attorney logo, and the primary things we look at are prevention, prosecution, and protection. And now let's see if this works. So there we go. And so as you all know, what my vision when I ran for district attorney, I knew that many people don't know and still don't know what district attorneys do. And so I made it my mission to connect the community to the courthouse, not only through the programs that I've implemented, but also making presentations like this and explaining the realities of the law and how it is to be a prosecutor right now. And everybody okay? All right. So hopefully this sound will work. Can you guys hear?
The sound is not coming through.
Okay, that was my question. I'm just going to keep going and I'll just talk about this after.
Right.
First one.
Hey, Lori, did you do the illustrations?
No.
I want to know where you got the drugs to paint that fast.
So Lori, I'm not sure if we're getting this. Is this what you want the presentation to be? We can't hear the audio.
I know. I just need to let it keep going because I'm not sure if the rest of it will work if I just get past it.
Okay.
It's almost over.
You might make this available to us later, Lori.
It's on my website actually, and I can have my assistant come and see. I think I was supposed to click something on Zoom before I signed on for this to work, so. But this just shows the variety of things that district attorneys do across the state, so. Okay, so sorry for that. I was worried that would happen. This is a video that we were gifted from the San Diego District Attorney's Office in order to help the community understand what DAs do. It's on my website and I'm happy to share it with you later. It's just a high level overview of what all DA's offices do in general. And then each DA's office within the state has their own internal programs, which some are more robust than others, depending on the priorities of that community. So, but our primary concern in my office is to support victims and protect our community and keep us safe. So we do have a victim witness assistance program, and that is primarily driven by state grants. And if you didn't hear, if you're the victim of a crime, there are state funds to help. We help you navigate to get the funding for that, for restitution, medical expenses, and other expenses that a victim suffer. Also, right now, our victim witness staff are primarily Spanish speaking, so they and many other of my staff have been deployed as DSW workers for the Office of Emergency Services for the entirety of COVID. So if you can imagine, during the entirety of COVID, my office is number one, courts ran for a short period of time, but primarily courts are running by Zoom. My non-support staff, my support staff, which are non-attorneys, were broken up into teams. Half of that team is in the office every day working. The other half is at home, either working remotely or working as DSW workers. Our Spanish-speaking workers first work with landlord-tenant concerns, then they worked at the point of testing, and now they've been deployed on a larger level at the point of distribution of vaccines. And then the other half of the team comes in the next week in the office, because if somebody in the office gets exposed to COVID, we want to know we have another team at the ready to come in and take it. So, we made a lot of changes in that regard. Our attorneys are primarily working remotely. We have, depending on the day, 27 attorneys. We did conduct 4 trials during COVID. 3 of them were full-on jury trials, including a murder case, which hung, which means the jury didn't agree. So that is the first one up for trials when the courts resume jury trials again. And we did also have 1 court trial. The remainder of our cases were done by Zoom, just like we're working right here. So that was something new and different for us. We have a consumer protection unit, which has been primarily helping with the landlord-tenant mediation during COVID. And also, we took the opportunity during COVID to really push forward reducing our carbon footprint by imploring a paperless program, basically. My attorneys were at home going through their computers, trying to handle court cases and provide discovery, which is the reports to the defense attorneys in our cases. So we launched an e-discovery program, and we are primarily paperless now. We do keep files for jury trials, but we've made significant strides in going paperless, which is pretty exciting. We are always focused on elder abuse, particularly during COVID. We've had quite a few elders. They can't communicate or see their loved ones. We have had a few people who were taken advantage of when they were at some of the facilities, the higher end facilities, where somebody befriended them on Messenger. And we know one person who lost at least $70,000 by scammers who, she thought she was going to get a lot more money from these people, and kept telling a family friend that she had a secret, and the family finally figured out she was getting ripped off. And in fact, she had been ripped off. So please be in contact with your seniors and make sure that you know what they're doing, and especially what they're doing on the internet, because now, they've escalated from phone contact to using the internet. So we're always watching out for our seniors, whether it's financial abuse or family members, physical abuse, caregivers. We also work very closely with the FAST team. It's a group of volunteers who help us put the financial piece of a case together. Our investigations unit now is also working as DSW workers during the primary testing period. Twice a day, we were taking all the tests, I guess before they were tested, the test ampules from the Civic Center to 3 different locations in the Bay Area for testing so that we had rapid result testing from that. So when they're not doing that, they're helping investigate child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking cases. And now we've taken on the employment development fraud. I don't know if you are all familiar with that unemployment scam. Primarily happened and generated in local jails and the prisons. And at last count, I think they were up to 12 billion with a B dollars loss that the state has lost, and some federal money as well. We're not getting that back. It's primarily gone. But we are doing our best to put cases together and prosecute people who are involved in that. And I want to shout out the District Attorneys Association. All the elected attorneys belong to this association, and we knew this was going on. We advised the governor's office of it several times, and when there was no response, finally decided that we had to go public with it because we had to stop the bleeding. And that's when it all came to the forefront. And the governor has given us, I think, $5 million across the state to now go back and try and prosecute and put those cases together. So that's taken up some of our time. I know last week the question of the hour was, why don't you prosecute the homeless? And I think Sergeant Bates did a great job of explaining the law, how it applies, that it was basically that law, Boise versus Idaho, said that you can't prosecute a person for being homeless, so you can't prosecute them for camping in public. You can if they're on somebody's private property and refuses to move, but if it's on public property, that's a separate issue. So you can't prosecute them unless there's a place for them to stay. And that, of course, has been the big rub, because that case didn't say what that place would look like. And it also didn't say what's going to happen to those people when they say no. And I really want to be mindful of 2 things. I was going through my Rotary newsletters, and there was a quote that Christina Stroh cited a couple of weeks ago from Coretta Scott King, and I don't have it with me, but it basically talked about, we really have to look at the big picture of our world and our community, and be mindful of empathy. And I'm also reminded that's one of the tenets in my mind of Rotary, is it fair to all concerned. So as a prosecutor, when I look at keeping our community safe, I can't look at it in a little tiny silo. I have to look at our entire community. So number one, there is no case that says this is what housing is. This is what the housing you should offer to a homeless person. And this is what you can do to a homeless person when they refuse to cooperate. So we're really in a catch-22, and the Supreme Court has refused to take up this case to give us any clarity on what kind of remedies we may have. And I am not aware of any DA's office that has successfully prosecuted somebody for refusing the housing that was offered to them. There's no criteria for what is proper housing. And, does it have to be in the city that they live? What if they have a mental health problem? What if they have a dog? What if they have a child? And you should know, in our county, you have a group of not only the care team that I know was mentioned by Sergeant Bates, but we have an incredibly robust collaboration of community partners, including the sheriff, my office, behavioral health, who takes care of all the mental health concerns for people in the county, and the public defender and probation. So we all work together for housing, to help people with housing, mental health issues, and the other variety of causes why somebody might become homeless. And I know we used to participate in the REST program. That was replaced by a program called Stepping Up, the Stepping Up Initiative, which is a collaborative of probably 40 community providers and leaders. And since that program started, I think in 2018 or 19, we have housed more than 200 people. And that's why they switched to it, because they realized that giving somebody a place just for a night did not solve the overall problem. And I think our success rate is over 90% of those people that have been housed. And one of the tenets of that is, if a person has a drug problem or alcohol problem, it's not mandated that they remain clean and sober when they're in that housing, because they've realized that it's too much for one person to handle all at once. You have to do things one thing at a time. And the first thing is to get them off the street and then offer them resources. So that program has been successful. It's not perfect. We don't have housing for everybody. And I would suggest, if you haven't had recently Mary Kay Sweeney speak to you, she really has her finger on the pulse of how we are housing people who are homeless and what we do with them when they get out of jail and all the opportunities there are for people in Marin County. So I would suggest you might want to have her as one of your speakers moving forward. So back to the homelessness. The reason why we're not prosecuting these cases right now, make no mistake about it, I don't want to be on the front page of the paper. This was Sausalito. Sausalito tried to find alternate housing for homeless people, including activists. I think this is from last week, the paper was. And so they had created a different community in a different area of Sausalito with storage lockers and bathing facilities and all sorts of other things for the homeless to move them from one park basically to another. And this was the end result, that that was put to a halt by a federal judge. And, you know, Sergeant Bates is right. There are people who are in there who may not need to be homeless. They might be activists for a totally different reason. But there are also people who are there not by their own designs and not by their own planning. So this is the problem that we have. And the other thing that we really do need to be mindful of, despite the fact that we're all here in our houses or offices without a mask, we are still in a pandemic. We have been in a pandemic for a year, and we have had to pivot and sometimes spin in circles just to keep up with the laws that have been changing and the safety problems and keeping our communities safe. So I did make some decisions, and one is that we are not prosecuting these cases unless there's something else going on. I think we've had one during COVID that we have prosecuted, and most police departments understand that, and we do what we can and call in the service providers. There's a mobile crisis unit that's available 6 days a week to help with people, and there are facilities where we can get housing for people. And it's true, some people have mental illnesses or drug problems and they don't accept that housing. So unless they're committing some other offense, it's not likely that my office is going to prosecute them at this moment in time, and without court clarification on what is housing in the term of what you're providing to this person. In other words, what are they refusing? So this is exactly why we have this problem. And it's true, these activists and the people who are homeless, 90% of them knew about that Boise case before I could even finish explaining it to my office. So, and it's a badge of honor, and they are using it to their best and full advantage. And I totally understand the frustration of people. I see it. I live in Novato. I just drove through Santa Fe yesterday and saw it there. And every city is struggling with this problem. So some of the questions are, you know, why isn't there a city ordinance? And not one city in this county or anywhere else that I know of has drafted a new and different city ordinance, because they can't. It wouldn't be legal, and they know that. And so city attorneys are struggling with this. And I recall the day this Boise versus Idaho case came out, when Adam McGill was the chief, and now he's your city manager. He marched up to the podium in the Novato City Council and said, you know, city council people, we need to change our ordinance. It is now unlawful. It is now unlawful to arrest someone for camping in public. And so that is the concern, and I understand the frustration. But, you know, I can also assure you, this week I have received 150 complaints by phone calls and emails from an organized national group of people who are upset and demanding that I drop charges in a case where 5 indigenous people are charged with damaging property on Catholic church property. So trust me, those people are just as angry about the prosecution of those individuals as this community is about the homeless situation. So, balancing all these things on the scale of justice and what we have to do to keep our community safe is, it's not easy. And I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but it's the realistic answer. So we do have housing for the homeless, but there's never going to be enough. The one program that I know we had all heard about was supposed to be half housing for homeless and half housing for veterans that was supposed to be at New Beginnings. I did hear Mary Kay Sweeney say that project is 2 years delayed now. So that's some housing that we're going to lose. But in the meantime, there's been opportunities from state money to purchase local hotels. And I think 2 were purchased and 1 was not. So there will be more housing for the homeless moving forward. But the reality is, it's not against the law to have a mental illness, and it's not against the law to be homeless. It's when you commit another offense that then law enforcement and my office can take action. The next question is, I know you've heard about the zero bail program, and will they really go to jail? Probably not. Let's say we do find a way to prosecute somebody for a crime and they happen to be homeless. 90% of the time they're going to receive a citation with a future date to come to court, not to go to jail, because we don't want to overcrowd the jail because of COVID. And also, we don't have courtrooms to conduct jury trials right now. We have 2 COVID safe courtrooms. So if they were actually taken to jail, they'd be given a citation from the jail, or in some cases post bail to appear. Our jail right now is primarily housing the most dangerous people to our community, the people who are committing burglaries and assaults and murders and assault with deadly weapons and people who are involved in gangs and commit crimes. So that's primarily who's sitting in our jail right now. Our jail population, when COVID started on our own, I collaborated with our probation department, the public defender, health and human services, and sheriff's office. When we knew that we were going to have to reduce the jail population because of COVID on our own, we first asked for a list from the jail of who were the most vulnerable people in our jail and could we get them housing. And we did that intentionally because many other counties don't collaborate like our county does. And so we worked together. We didn't have a public defender who just went down there and demanded that these people be released from the jail. We worked together, and if people were on probation or we could get them released to probation, they all got navigated to services, whether it was mental health, a homeless program, couple of hotels where the state gave us money to house people there. So we literally had people released from the jail by my staff on Friday, and Saturday when my staff was doing volunteer work at one of the local hotels would see that individual and provide them services there. So it's really important that people understand we're not like San Francisco. We do collaborate. Clearly, we don't always agree, but during COVID, we all worked together to not only reduce the jail population, but release them to some place where they were safe. And we've had very few failures, frankly, of that program. So we initially reduced the jail population by 50%. First, we started on our own. Then there were Supreme Court orders about releasing the vulnerable populations. Then there was another order that said you have to release somebody who has 30 to 60 days left on their sentence. And just so you know, when you serve a sentence in California, the vast majority of the time, you only serve half of it because of the credit structure. So 60 days left on a sentence was really 30 days, and 30 days was really 15 days. So again, we worked together, got that list of people, worked with probation, and got them supervision terms, got them GPS trackers or whatever they needed so that they could be not just set loose in the community, but released to a place where we knew where they are and that they would hopefully remain safe and not harm themselves or someone else in our community. And then the zero bail structure came down, which basically said in very few cases, could you actually demand a person to provide bail in order to be released? And some of those structures still are in effect. The reason why we wanted to reduce the jail population here in Marin. This is a quote from an article about the deaths of San Quentin inmates. Our jail is not even close to the structure, physical structure of San Quentin, but I think it's really important. 28 people died in San Quentin, including a friend of mine who was a correctional sergeant there. He was, I think, 54, 55 years old. So, and the end result of that was not only those people dying, and no matter what you think about people who are in prison, they were not adequately cared for, and it was absolute mismanagement by the state. People died, and the end result was that 1,500 inmates were either released or moved to different prisons. They couldn't move them from prison to prison because all the prisons were imploding with COVID. Most of those people got released. And so my office got notice, as did other DAs. We had to turn around and then notify the victims in these crimes that these inmates were going to be released because of the prison program. And it's still going on. We still get an email at least every 2 weeks of people who are getting released as part of this program. So that is one of the unfortunate things that happened. And what I really do not want to see in front of our Marin County Jail at our courthouse is this kind of demonstration, that people dying or catching COVID in our jail because we are prosecuting them. And you need to remember, a lot of people in jail have yet to be convicted. There are people serving their sentences. There are people who have yet to be convicted. So it's really important that I am certainly mindful of this happening in our community, especially so close to San Quentin, and we all watch that. So I think that's enough said about that. So, but this is why we are trying to be mindful and balance all the equities. And the county is very mindful of racial equity and diversity and inclusion. And that is the vision that we also have to keep in mind when we're making these decisions in cases. So we have not had one person die in our jail. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware of COVID cases by inmates in custody in our jail, certainly no hospitalizations. So I think that's pretty amazing. And it's because the inmates are in single cells. And so they can't, it's less easier for them to expose one another to COVID. So also during COVID, we made some intentional policy decisions. I made the decisions not to prosecute during COVID crimes that are basically considered quality of life crimes, minor drug possession, being drunk in public, the kind of things you think about that maybe a homeless person might be committing. And if we had those cases in our court system when COVID started, I dismissed those cases because for equity reasons, I didn't think it was fair. If a person had, let's say, an intoxicated in public case pending during COVID, and I'm now not filing those cases, it's really not fair to prosecute one person who got caught before and one person who didn't after. The fact of the matter is we have a year to prosecute cases if it's a misdemeanor, which most of our cases are. And some people were on probation, but we had an incredible backlog of hundreds of cases in the pipeline when COVID started. And now, and we were told until about an hour ago that jury trials were going to commence on Monday. We were just told there's been a reprieve and they're not going to commence for another month. Right now, we have more than 200 jury trials set in our courtroom here in Marin. And we have 2 jury trial courtrooms that are equipped to handle a jury trial. And those are the 2 courtrooms that where we conducted the 4 jury trials before this. So we've got 200 cases. We've got 3 murder cases. One's a murder retrial of a gang charge case that happened here in Novato. We have if any of you heard about the alleged murder that happened at Centerpoint, we're talking cases that go back to years, some of them before I even was elected. So these cases have been sitting in the pipeline. And when people demand a speedy trial, which in a felony, you can ask for a speedy trial in 60 days. If it's a misdemeanor, it's 30 days or 45 days if you're out of custody. So we're sitting on 200 jury trials unresolved despite our best efforts to do so. And I just want to share this list with you. I know you can't really read it. These are all red on the right-hand side because these are all defendants who have asserted their speedy trial rights. And these are jury trials set for the 1st through the 8th, the 15th to the 22nd. So it doesn't even go to the end of the month right here, right now. This is what I look at every week. Like, how are we for jury trials, and what are we going to do when those 8 people or however they are show up for trial on Monday and want their speedy trial, and my county only has 2 courtrooms to accommodate them, and one of those is a murder case. It is going to proceed. That's
So Lori, I promised them that they could ask a question or two. I apologize for interrupting.
Absolutely.
A lot of times. So is there a question or two, Ron?
I'm sorry, Gary, what was your question?
I'm going to say, is there a question or two that somebody'd like to ask?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Craig.
Craig McCurdy?
Yeah.
Hi, Lori. Yes, thank you for being with us, and thank you for the good talk.
Yeah.
So my business, the front yard of my business is the Novato Library and Leaguer Park. So when I go out my front door, all I see is all the destruction that's happening at Leaguer Park. So the businesses and residents around Leaguer Park are the victims of this homeless encampment at Leaguer Park. There's registered sex offenders and felons there. There's public exposure, urination, and defecation there on a daily basis, even though they have porta potties. There's drug and alcohol abuse all day, every day. It's one big party with guitars playing, and they're all around in a circle with no masks on, so there's no COVID protection. Any public person or public employee that walks through that park is going to be exposed to COVID because none of them wear masks.
Yeah.
They have vicious pit bulls off leash. I almost got attacked by one. Luckily, the homeless fellow called it off right at the last minute before it latched onto my leg. You've got environmental destruction of the park. They've taken 3,000 pounds out of the park of trash, a lot of it out of the creek. So you've got destruction of the creek. They're terracing the banks for tent sites to put their tents on, throwing the dirt into the creek. There's endangered coho salmon and steelhead spawning grounds in the creek that's being destroyed. You got foul language all day long, every day. So the businesses and residents around this park are the victims in this situation. So the majority of these homeless individuals at Leaguer Park do not want to go to a shelter room. They're partiers. They want to be there drinking and doing drugs and partying all day, every day. So if one of them refuses a shelter room that's offered by the county, a nice clean hotel room that's offered by the county, and they're breaking all these laws, they should be required to go to that shelter room or move along. I do not agree with not prosecuting them. They're breaking at least a dozen laws by being there. They're breaking all of Nevada's ordinances by being there with their behavior. So if they're offered a shelter bed and they refuse the shelter bed, they should be required to move along or get arrested and prosecuted. That's my feeling. Sorry.
No, I hear you, Craig. And here's the problem. The one thing I'm talking about is the crime of refusing to go somewhere. The other crimes are things that can and should be addressed. And I know it's out of control. I see it and I hear it. It's destroying your property values. I can tell you what Sonoma County did, and I just wasn't able to talk to the person in charge of that program. I don't know if you saw, they had a very similar program in Sonoma County, and they moved everyone out to Highway 12. They provided them with a facility out on Highway 12, and it worked really well. They had little trailers for them. I believe it was in the Kenwood area. It worked really well until the fires. And I think the fires destroyed some of that, but I think really that's the best solution, frankly. I don't know there's a remedy for prosecuting people for refusing to accept housing that we provide them. And when they come to court, if they demand a trial for a crime that we're not even positive we can prosecute because there's no case law to say what is adequate housing. And I have that lined up against those cases I just showed you for people exposing themselves and beating their wives and everything else. It's not going to take priority in a courtroom. And that's the sad fact of the deal. I hear you, I get you, but I don't have the answer. All I know is we can't prosecute our way out of this. We need to just keep leaning on the people who are providing sources for these people. And, you know, it's your legislature too. They could try and pass something on a state level that citywide people cannot. But the other, you talked about many other crimes that can and should be prosecuted. So that's, the problem is, again, they're probably just going to get a citation, or for the city ordinance, it would be handled within the city. So there's not a lot of teeth to some of these violations, unfortunately. And I know that doesn't help you. That doesn't help your clients to try and come to your office and people that want to go to the Stars restaurant. I get it, and I get that it's out of control, but I'm not pretending that I can prosecute my way out of it.
I would like you to study Oakland's brand new law as of October of 2020. So the city of Oakland, right across the bay, they made a law against the homeless camping in public parks or within a certain number of feet of public parks, schools, libraries, so forth and so on. So the city of Oakland did pass a law with teeth, and they have not been sued, and they're enforcing that law. The homeless in Oakland are not allowed to camp in any parks or be near a school or a library.
So the city of Novato could and the county could both pass a similar ordinance if they're, I would think if Oakland passed it, they went through their city attorneys. And so that's something I would ask your city council to pass. And then we can also ask the board of supervisors. And I will look at that because I haven't read that law. So.
Yeah, please read that Oakland law. It was very controversial. It was all over the press. It was even in the USA Today, and the city of Oakland was able to pass it.
I don't know how I missed that, but that's kind of your answer. Unfortunately, it's just going to have to be, sadly, baby steps. But
Can
any step is a good step.
I thought Sergeant Bates last week told us the difference, and you can correct me if I'm following what Dr. McCurdy said. The creek that they're in is federal land, right, or state land. It's not city land. And the city of sounds like the ordinance in Oakland and the parks would be city parks. And that's why we're dealing with that Idaho decision, that it's who owns the property. And that whole creek, because of the easement, is governed by federal rules, hence you can't move them.
That's actually not true. It's Lee Gerner Park, which is a city park.
No, that's not, Craig, I'm not going to debate you. That's what Mr. Bates, Officer Bates said last week. And I'd like Ms. Frugoli to answer it.
He was talking about part of the creek, and I think some areas surrounding that. There certainly are some boundaries in there.
And then I'll be back.
I did hear him say that.
Dennis, do you have another question? Dennis?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I live near Miwok Park and I haven't seen anything there. I don't know about Pioneer Park, but is there anything stopping somebody from setting up camp in our public parks?
No, that's Lee Gerner Park where they are is a public park, and that's where these are occurring.
No, I know, but I mean, it's so somebody could just start camping at Miwok or Pioneer Park?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think that's why the city was, to a degree, sanctioning this. I don't want to necessarily think that's the right word, but to try and keep all the people in the same area instead of spread apart. That's just my thought. So if you're going to provide services,
Let's just take one more question for Lori, and then we can we'll let people escape if they want to. Is there any other singular questions? Okay. Well, Lori, I want to thank you. We're so lucky to have you as our district attorney.
you're welcome. Let me just, can I show you, give me just one more minute to show you
sure, go
about the gun thing that I came for. Happy to come back some other time and talk about hate crimes. I belong to, I'm not in our town, Novato, but we have a Marin County Gun Safety Collaborative, and you're gonna shortly be seeing some public information about this program and our attempt to educate the community about firearms. There's a grand jury report that thought there could be 44,000 homes in Marin with firearms. And it's really important to know that 30% of the suicides in Marin are by firearm. And I think that's from some 2018 information. So we're going to be promoting responsible gun ownership and looking at the gun dealers, as well as enforcement of gun prohibitions like the red flag laws. So you're going to be seeing that moving forward. It's a community effort. We have about 15 community partners, law enforcement, Center for Domestic Peace, our non-behavioral health group. So
Okay. Thanks so much.
Right, the
Thanks a
park.
lot, Lori. We're gonna close the meeting. So some people have awfully busy schedules, I'm afraid. So I've got just a couple of announcements, and then we'll pass over to Jim for the conclusion of the raffle.
I'll see you very soon.
Right.
The inspection is 3:15.
Dennis, could you mute yourself, please? So I just want to mention again, the district assembly. Please consider signing up for that. It's actually an interesting thing to attend, especially if you're a new Rotarian and you haven't been involved in any of the district stuff. That's going to be, when is it going to be? 20th of, shoot, I don't remember when that is. Anyway,
Yeah, March 20th.
March 20th. Yeah, March 20th. Sign up for SRAG, Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. And don't miss Dennis and Blind Date this Saturday at 6 p.m. at Track. And Mr. Spillman, how about tell us what's happening with the raffle?
The winning number is, let me find it here, 1241, 1241.
is that what that number says?
No.
No.
That's Dennis in reverse.
That's Dennis's number.
Bye.
So the winning number is 1241. Who's the closest?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4.
That was good, Dennis.
So who has 1, 2, 3, 4?
I do.
Don Violin?
Yep.
I'm 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, Renee has it. And what do you have, Don?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it's my
two.
understanding you're both winners. Don Violin and Renee Prada are both winners.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's the end of our meeting. We're going to leave this open if anybody wants to chat a little bit, or if Lori can stay for some more questions.
Sure, I'm happy.
We'll leave it open. So goodbye,
Happy to
everybody. Have a
stay.
great weekend.
So I think you all should get together and go to the city council and ask them to look at that Oakland city ordinance, because I just haven't read it. I apologize.
So Lori, who is Mary Kay Sweeney? Who is she?
Mary Kay Sweeney runs Homeward Bound.
Okay, thank you. Sure, know her.
Yeah, and she's in the
I had
women's
an awful
hall.
day yesterday when I ran into a homeless person that was 22 years old and so incredibly vulnerable. And she was asking guys to take her to Santa Fe. And she was totally lost. Polly was with me and we gave her some food and called the police department, and they didn't have anybody to come, and then called North Marin Community Service and they didn't have anybody to come, and they gave me somebody else and nobody could come. She was ready to go wherever somebody would take her.
Wow.
I got a lot of information. 3 hours I took, and I could get nobody come and help us. I talked to the
Wow.
police department. I talked to all these people. And you said that there's somebody called a mobile crisis unit. What is that?
I'll get you their information. It's primarily when people are in mental health crisis.
She probably was in that.
Yeah, and so literally I think they're available from 8 until midnight or 10 p.m. And I'll get you their information, and
I made a lot of phone calls and nobody gave me this name. It was really discouraging.
Yeah,
I
that is.
actually went away and left her, you know?
I'll tell you what, Gary, your point is well taken. And right now the county is working on a program where when just that kind of situation happens, we have to educate law enforcement and the fire department when those kind of calls come in. And we're talking about embedding somebody from mental health in the dispatch centers and giving them a checklist of questions to ask so we can see if we can navigate them to this mobile crisis unit, and they come out and talk to the kids or the people or adults or whoever they are. So that's unfortunate that didn't occur, and it's a training problem. And
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much,
so
Lori.
where did she go? What happened to her? That's the kind of
I have
person.
no idea. I left her, and when I said, I looked her in the eye and said, I've spent 3 hours trying to find somebody to help. I can't find anybody.
Wow.
And she was gone in 30 seconds. I kind of looked down and she was gone. I have no idea. I didn't sleep last night thinking about, could have been your daughter, my daughter, you know,
That's right. And she's the perfect victim
yeah.
because
So
right now
Lo-
nobody cares about her.
So Lori, the Sausalito case was handled very improperly. I feel they tried to move the homeless in one big group from one park to a less desirable park.
Right.
So I think the League Earner Park situation can be handled much more humanely. On a one-by-one basis, if you took each homeless person there and offered them a more humane shelter, as in a hotel room, or you upgrade their situation,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be allowed to stay there and just party. This is going to be a permanent homeless encampment if we cannot enforce that rule.
Yeah.
Ms.
And I
Frugoli?
think, honestly, Craig, I think the police department is trying to do that on an individual basis. And that's why they have the CARES people out there and everyone else out there. It's just an uphill battle.
Ms.
Yeah,
Frugoli, following up on that, could you give us a hypothetical of what kind of case could be moved up to get the Supreme Court to actually take it? Because right now we're bound by the 19th Circuit decision, or
Right.
9th Circuit.
Yeah.
What would be the circumstances that could make this change?
I can't even imagine, honestly.
So we're stuck
Yeah.
unless it's legislated.
I think legislature is always the best way to go because that's the four corners of what we look at. And I did ask, I'm not aware of any DA's office that has prosecuted somebody, and this may change after COVID, prosecuted someone for refusing to accept housing. If that would probably be in this case, the key pivotal situation. So.
Thank you.
That's the bottom line right there. You have to be able to prosecute people for not being willing to go to a better shelter situation.
Right. So for example, the Sausalito thing, if the federal government right now, they said you can't do it because it's COVID, but if that changed later when COVID's over, and there were options, and I read some of the description of where they were moving them, and I hear your point, Craig, but at some points, I mean, cities are all doing this. Novato was prepared to do it and then I think changed their mind, but at some point, some city is going to do that and the court is going to say, you know what, that was sufficient and you should have taken it, or they may not. I'm not sure I'm confident any court would say that, because the next thing you know, if you're sending them someplace and there's religious problems or they can't take their security dog or who knows what. So right now the pendulum is really, in my mind, on many levels, not really victim oriented. And that's a struggle that all DAs are having. So.
Are there a number of people that are taking them food down there? If you take them food there, then that's where they're going to stay because they get care. Is there a Rotary club that I heard that's helping people down there from another city?
Gary, they have enough food and water to last them for a year. Everyone keeps bringing them more and more and more and more. And they should be bringing it to the North Bay Community Services on Novato Boulevard.
That's right. It's all over next door. When it started raining, they need tents, and somebody went and got like tents donated from one of the local stores, and that doesn't help the situation. Just like the signs we have in Novato, please don't give money to people who are asking for money on the streets. Give it to a local resource to help them. So yeah, that doesn't help the deal.
There's a number of churches that provide food for the homeless people over there.
Yeah.
So like Officer Bates made the point last week, we have 100 homeless people in Novato. Only 15 of them are at League Earner Park. So all this food and water is being brought to League Earner Park instead of, what about the other 85 homeless people that are in Novato? They're not getting it because it's all coming to League Earner Park. It's a big mistake.
Yeah, and they're also not visible. A lot of the homeless people in Novato are not visible. They're back in the hills and
What about the ones that are on that road out to the airport?
Yeah.
What are those people on the road out to Knoxfield?
Yeah, I think the county was able to move them. I'm not positive, or some of them. They're living in their own little quarters, and some of them were polluting. We've had a couple criminal cases out of there. But those people, what they would do, they would end up moving from there. You know, there was a bunch of them by Anderson Drive before, down by the dumps in Santa Fe. So there has always been people who kind of caravan from one community to another. And there are ordinances. Almost every city has an ordinance that you can't live in your camper for more than so many days in any particular place.
Yeah.
When you drive into Santa Fe, they have one right there at the Freitas Parkway. It's an announcement that you can't do that.